Bene, direi che possiamo iniziare. Benvenuti and a very warm welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. It's a special delight to welcome our speakers tonight, Maggie Rose, Adele D'Arcangelo, and Itala Vivan, in celebration of Maggie's book Dark Dante, published in 2021. And this is the book we are going to talk tonight. So, first of all, I would like to introduce the author of the book, Maggie Rose, accomplished playwright, teacher of British theatre studies, and co-founder of English Theatre Milan. In the course of her career, she has had an ongoing association with our institute, contributing to several initiatives. To mention just a few, Scottish-Italian Connections and Identities, 6 months here, 6 months there, with Emanuela Rossini, performed at the Gateway Theatre in Edinburgh in 2000, as well as adaptations and translations from Italian into English, such as Renato Gabrielli's mobile thriller, which in 2004 performed at the Travers Theatre in Edinburgh and won a Herald Angel Award and a Fringe First at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Her first novel, Dark Dante, is a mystery thriller set in Florence in the spring of 2000, but it is also an insight into Italian culture and much more than that. So for more fascinating details about the book, I will leave in a moment Maggie in conversation with professors Adele D'Arcangelo and Itala Vivan. Adele D'Arcangelo is Associate Professor at the University of Bologna since 2015. Her research interests include literary and theatrical translation, editorial policies, and translation teaching. Itala Vivan is Professor of Culture and Postcolonial Studies, formerly at the School of Political Science at the University of Milan. She has researched and published in the field of postcolonial studies and more recently on the role of cultural museums in contemporary society. Just a little housekeeping before I leave you. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box in your WebEx control panel. We will take some time for questions at the end of the presentation. So thank you so much for your attention, and I will now give the floor to Adele. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clara. Maybe I'll start with a question for Maggie. But before that, I just want to say that this new novel of hers has been a surprise for some in a certain sense for me, but a very, very welcome surprise. I know Maggie from a very long time, I must say. I know she is a great theatre writer, a dramatist, but I didn't know that she had this passion, which I hope she will be telling us about in a little time. I just want to add that my idea is to try translating the book into Italian and maybe trying to see if it's possible to have an Italian version of the book published soon. So some of the aspects of the books we will be discussing are particularly challenged from this point of view. But as I said, it's a great celebration of Italian culture, I would say, and certainly of our biggest poet ever, Dante. I might just leave the floor to Itala, and then.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Adele. Well, I want to thank Maggie for this book because in this book she gives back to Italy, the country she has been living in for so many years, you know, things that she has picked up all through the years. And in a very nice and attractive way, very interesting. The book is a detective story, but it is also something else because it is set in Florence, which is, as everybody knows, one of the great centers of Italian arts, of Italian history, very beautiful town, and a great tourist attraction, of course, where everybody goes. And the English have been going to Florence for a long time in their grand tour of Europe. I mean, Florence was one of the main steps. Now, this is a Florence that comes through a dark story, a story of murder and mystery. But the background, the setting and the background are Florence and Tuscany. And the actors, the characters who act and move around against this backdrop are typical figures of Florence from that point of view, considering Florence great center for tourism, etc. That is to say, expatriates, people who go to Florence to live forever or go to Florence regularly because they love the place, they have made friends, etc. Or they go there to buy their shoes, like Marilyn Monroe, who
And
said
bags.
that her shoes came from Florence. Now, but interestingly enough, they go to Florence, to Tuscany, to Italy also to buy dresses and to eat wonderful food. And this happens all the time in the book. And it's very interesting because the book this way becomes a sort of guidebook to Italian food. But let's go back to the book itself, to the main plot. The main plot, I will hint at it very briefly, not to disclose any
Yes.
secret or any mystery, is about it's about a chain, a sequence of murders which take place in Florence. And the actors, the characters acting, you know, their own parts in this story are Maria Farrell, whom we meet at the very beginning, the opening of the book. She's a playwright and a theater director from Manchester. She has her own theater company, and she's actually working at, putting up a new play by a friend of hers in Manchester when somebody phones her up, and it is a notary public from Florence, Dr. Manetti, telling her that her uncle, Peter Farrell, who used to live in Florence, has been murdered, and she must go there because she is inheriting from him. So she flies down to Florence, and from there on, the setting becomes Florence and the events which unfold from this murder. Peter Farrell was a middle-aged man, an art historian, and he had been living in Florence for a long time. Then there are his friends, and these friends are very curious zoo of people because they are eccentric, they are a bit, they have strange tempers, they cut strange figures. And so we move around with Maria, following Maria, among these people who are occasionally very rich and eccentric, or very eager to get more money, or just sort of camp people like Gabriele, who is this shadowy figure, who was a close friend of Peter. And it's really interesting because going on with the book, as you know, the things go by, we have all this world displaying its wings in front of us, so that the book becomes a theater in a way, where each of the characters plays his or her own role, including, of course, the detectives, Italian detectives, as usual, you know, in detective stories, the police don't know anything. They are unable to do anything. They are unable to find the culprit. And it is the genial young lady from Britain who comes over and tells them which way to move and which way to get the murderers. Now, I think that the book is it's very attractive because of these reasons. It gives us a setting which is at one time known and even I would say even in a way banal. This would be exotic people from the world of the expatriates. But at the same time, they are eccentric and they are interesting because they help us to discover other, hidden plots which go on below the surface. And then on the other hand, we are plunged into Italy, even though it's to my Italian eyes, it's a very funny aspect of Italy because it's an Italy for tourists. But of course, those who come to Italy as tourists will recognize themselves in that situation and be very happy, you know, there. And so between one rich meal and another meal, the plot unfolds and ends very happily, as you will see when you read the book. So I'm really, you know, astonished at Maggie Rose, who was able to build up such a clever novel, because it's very cleverly put together. I mean, you don't know what's going on, and then you have this thread, Dante, this thread, you know, guiding you till this thread helps you to explain the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I would like, maybe Maggie can answer me later. I don't know how we organize the thing, but I would like Maggie to explain how she got to know this type of expatriates, you know, people living in Florence and still being English, still being something else, but becoming Florentine in a way, becoming
Yeah. Yeah, I
a
suppose.
different kind
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
how it was that you organized and how it was that you switched from writing for the theater to detective stories. Was it because you have been a harsh reader of detective stories yourself, or because the theater led you to that? Because
Yeah.
this particular book is somehow theatrical in a way, and there are coup de théâtre, you know, many coup de théâtre in the plot.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think I've switched to writing novels, certainly not, because I've just written another play just in the last few months. So this novel was an adventure for me into something very different. And it took absolutely years to write.
I can't hear.
Sorry, Maggie, we can't hear you anymore.
We can't hear, Maggie.
No?
Mm.
Oh dear.
No, it looks okay now.
No,
It
okay.
sounds
It's
okay
okay.
now. Just try
Yeah.
again. Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay now.
Can you
Yeah.
hear me? Yeah. No, I was just saying this adventure of writing a novel took an awful long time. And I've got the Italian Institute to thank for part of the reason why I was spurred on to finishing it, because as I was saying, 10 years ago, there was a Dante Society in Edinburgh. And a good friend, Rosemary Johnson, invited me one evening in winter to talk about, I think I'd written 2 chapters of this novel, and they were very different from what I'd written, what I actually produced into 2021. But they really did encourage me to realize that I had a good story, because I remember I already had this idea of connecting this woman, she becomes a detective, with a murder story and with Dante and so on. So it was so interesting, if you like, to talk to these Dante specialists in Edinburgh that evening. And then it was terribly difficult actually to move from being a playwright to being a novelist. I mean, the whole thing of writing a novel is you're not just producing characters, you've got to produce background, you've got to describe the characters, you've got to fill in background that you don't have to do, obviously, with playwriting. So I think that's why the process took such a long time. And I think the process, at least talking to other people who have written novels, is probably pretty, original, in the sense that I've been going to Florence since I was 18 and tramping around the city, looking at things, looking at works of art and so on. But when seriously I started writing this book about 4 years ago, I started going to Florence with a very good Tuscan friend of mine with a camera, and we took loads of pictures of Florence. And it soon became apparent to me that I didn't only want to concentrate on the iconic Florence of, as you say, Italy, tourism, the cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore, Bargello. I wanted to picture a very ordinary Florence. And I'll just show you a few images that will make you understand the kinds of things I focused on at times. So Beatrice, could you just show a few of these clips? So this very ordinary station, when you come to Florence, this is the station. You don't see a beautiful station. It's full of noise. It's full of people milling around, pickpockets as well, and so on. And you've immediately got this mix when the next slide, when you come out of the station, you see this plaque, for instance, with about Percy Shelley having written Ode to the West Wind in Florence, but immediately after, you're bombarded by McDonald's, by a Hotel Derby, all these kind of very, very popular, ordinary images that mean you could be anywhere. And I think that's one of the things I really did want to combine in this. Itila's completely right, saying that there is this elite of expats, but there are also ordinary people like, the porter, Singh, and other people, Maureen. They're just ordinary expats. They're not necessarily eccentric or strange. The next, and also the chaos of Florence, when Maria arrives in Florence, she's imagining it as this beautiful city of the guidebooks, but in actual fact, it's chaotic. It's like any, polluted city in Italy from some respects. The next slide. And some of these very unknown places actually worked as triggers for parts of the plot. For instance, in Via Ricasole, there's this tabernacle that was a moment, was almost a moment of, if you carry on as well, the next, a kind of epiphany for Maria, that she would be able, that she would decide to become a detective. It was in a quiet moment when she's confronted with these 5 candles, and this idea of elemosine, charity, that she realizes that this is what she's got to do. She thinks of the famous line by Hamlet, the readiness is all. She's got to be ready. She's got to be ready to confront and try and find this murderer who's, so brutally killed this uncle that she's never really met. So there is a level as well of spirituality, I think, in the novel that every so often comes to the fore. And if you go on to the next slide, there's also the aspect of the Protestant cemetery that she goes to, you know, to remember her uncle who wanted to be buried here in the cemetery. So there is aspects of Florence that are very English in inverted commas, you know, like little havens of Englishness within Florence. Just go on. Yeah, next. And we've got, you know, really famous writers like Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who were there alongside Peter when Maria arrives in Florence. Next. And then one of the other places that was really significant for me, which I've, you know, discovered when I started going around Florence 4 years ago, was this beautiful botanical gardens, Il Giardino dei Semplici. And Maria realizes that the way the monks organize this garden to cure ordinary people, and she sees it as a therapeutic garden, she then thinks, well, why can't I use some of Peter's money to do some really good charitable work in Manchester and sell some of these, you know, I'll be selling a couple of paintings, but I'll also donate some. So she sees art and nature as therapeutic. So it's through this landscape that you discover, I think, Maria's personality very gradually as well. I mean, some people have said that to be a mystery thriller, the novel is too slow. And I suppose really it's not really at all a classical mystery thriller. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question, Isa.
Thank you. Well, maybe Adele will intervene now. What?
I might ask another question.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Yes, sure. I'd like to come and maybe ask you something about actually what inspired you somehow in writing this story, and especially in deciding to write a detective novel or a thriller, as you might call it. So going to this very popular genre kind of writing. I found out you are a big fan of TV series of this genre, and you certainly are also of novelists or writers. And the question I want to ask is, which specific authors do you like most, or actually did inspire you somehow for the writing of the story? And if you only referred to Anglophone writers, or if even some of the Italian writers who are particularly well known in this particular genre, as I would say Camilleri, or lately Alessandro Robecchi, who set the whole story of Monte Rossi detective in Milano, so in the city you live in, if they were an inspiration for you somehow.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they were, especially Camilleri. You know, I've been often to the village where he lived before he died in Monte Amiato. So certainly Camilleri and Montalbano for me is absolutely fantastic. Probably my favorite crime writer in the UK is certainly Ian Rankin. You know, the very down-to-earth kind of Edinburgh settings of his novels. But I think, you know, I have read a lot, and also, as you say, Adele, crime writers in Florence, ex-detectives who have written really good crime fiction. But I think one of my passions, probably more than novels, is actually watching television, watching documentaries about criminality, real criminality, you know, learning about mass murders. I remember when I was a small, very young girl, there was a mass murder on the Yorkshire moors, and I was absolutely fascinated by that for years and years, you know, how these two people had actually massacred these young children. So it's a kind of broad interest, I think, in criminality, the criminal mind. I mean, in recent years, I've been working quite a lot in the juvenile detention center in Milan as well. And that's another aspect of exploring,
this is very
you know,
interesting.
yeah. So it's not one specific thing, I don't think, that spurred me on. I think more than wanting to write a crime, a mystery novel, my idea at the beginning was to connect Dante to a much wider audience in the UK and English-speaking countries, because it seemed to me, and it still seems to me, because I know young people in England today, that you come out of even good schools, even public schools, and you often have no conception whatsoever of European literature. You know about Shakespeare, Milton, and all our writers. But I mean, I did quite a good grammar school, but nobody ever mentioned to me Goethe or Tolstoy, let alone Dante. So for me, this was one of the things, like, I've wanted to popularize Shakespeare through my adaptations of Shakespeare. I think one of the main thrusts of wanting to write about Dante was that. And I make Maria into a person who knows nothing about Dante before she actually gets to, or virtually nothing about Dante before she embarks on this, trip to Florence.
Now, this is a very interesting aspect of your project, I would say, or literary project. And maybe before leaving, again, the floor to Italy, I would ask you how Dante, who is such a huge legacy for Italian culture, how you approached the reading of his Commedia, and especially, of course, I guess, the Inferno, and how come you found a kind of fil rouge that would have worked perfectly fine in your novel with this great and incredible theoretical description of the Inferno?
Yeah. Well, I think the starting point for me was reading, the Inferno. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? But it's not so obvious when you think that my first language is in Italian. So I certainly couldn't have read only the original version. And what I did was I had, like, when people do read Shakespeare who are not British, they're not native speakers, sorry, not British, you generally have a number of translations. So I had Longfellow's translation, I had several other translations. And then, thank goodness, I came across a translation by an Irish Belfast poet, writer, and musician called Karen Carson. And this really changed my attitude to Dante, because even while I was each translation, I was reading the original alongside it. But when I read Karen's translation, and I'd actually met him in London, so it made it even more interesting to know the translator. He made me realize the potential of Dante in contemporary English. And the translations that I've done in the novel, because I didn't want to use anybody else's translation, was certainly very deeply inspired by Karen, who got the rhythm, the feeling, the onomatopoeic often, that these more academic translators, honestly, at least for me, don't manage. I mean, philologically, they're much more accurate, but they don't make Dante vibrate as he does, in the kind of translation that Carson did. So that was the way. And then, it was a matter of deciding on a frame. Whereas with writing plays, I've never made a plot. I was compelled to do that, and slot in the different murders very carefully. Otherwise, a mystery thriller just doesn't work if you've not got a very careful framework to it.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah.
Italy, it's your turn now.
Yeah.
No, I think it's very, very interesting reading because, as you said, Dante becomes alive through this strange mystery plot. It becomes, close to us. And I also another aspect which I found as I was hinting a while ago, the fact that these people enjoy life. I mean, they go to a castle, Catherine's castle, Countess.
Yes.
By the way, her name is Catherine Guiccioli.
Yeah.
Guiccioli is a very famous name because Teresa Guiccioli was, interesting
Yeah.
figure.
Byron's. Yeah.
Ugo Foscolo's mistress for a long time, and then Doris Gainsborough, another name which sounds very has a high sounding echo because a great painter, a name of a great English painter, and all these people they meet and they have wonderful meal together. They drink a lot. They have all sort of drinks. And then there is another great figure who likes food, and of course it's Singh, the portinaio, the janitor
Yeah.
of Peter Farrell's house,
Yeah.
who is, by the way, pays very harshly for this passion of his in the end, as we know at the end of the book.
Yeah.
So this fact of food is a very important thread, a very important connection in the novel. Could you tell us something about it, this?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you've made me notice this more than I'd never really thought about it at all, that it was very, very prominent in the novel. And it certainly is, because I read the novel thinking about what you said yesterday, Isla. I think, for a British person like myself or like Maria coming to Italy, it's one of the things that really strikes you very deeply. This thing about food and the central part of food for many Italians. In Britain, we tend to eat to live rather than cooking beautiful meals or, looking at the aesthetic part of cooking. So I think it's fascinating for us as people who are looking as outsiders. I mean, still today, after 40 years in Italy, I never cease to be amazed at the, care and attention Italian people pay to food compared to England. Because the minute I go back, you rush to the supermarket, you buy quick food. A lot of people in Britain today have even got rid of the kitchens. They've got microwaves. I mean, I'm exaggerating, not everybody, but quite a few people. So I think when tourists come to Italy, or people like Maria come to Italy, they're expecting this. They're expecting this wonderful food, this wonderful drink. And if they don't get it, as they don't in many places, because, Florence and Venice are now subject to what this new, what they call now over tourism. You often eat terrible food in Florence and Venice. But I've wanted to create this, probably, it's not very truthful, if you like, if you look at the general picture of food in places like Florence today. But I suppose that Maria is a privileged person in the fact that she's not eating in restaurants, she's eating in people's homes, and she's eating in people's homes of, who are aristocrats or, very, very well off. Yeah. And also the regionality as well. I wanted to bring out the fact that, she wasn't anywhere in Italy. She was somewhere specific in Tuscany. I think that's an important thing and something that doesn't exist in the UK. So it's one of these things of building, bridges, cultural bridges, pointing to things that are different, that a UK reader is going to be probably interested in. Yeah.
And then, yes, also one thing which I appreciated, you were hinting at that earlier on, Maggie, the fact that there are characters of different social backgrounds. You have the aristocrat, Countess Caterina Guiccioli, then you have the gardener, then you have this, you have that, you have the janitor who is coming from India, an Indian man who has emigrated, and then you have the very rich tourist, Doris Gainsborough. I mean, it's a very varied background setting of people, and this is very interesting in the novel. And the only thing I'm afraid it's still left a bit mysterious is Peter Farrell, because there are many things which are left untold about him. He's like, you know, a stone commendatore di pietra, convitato di pietra in the novel. He's there present. I mean, he's dead since the very beginning. We never see him move around because the novel opens with the news of his death. But he's always there. But he's somehow mysterious because he moves. You know, other people are moved by him in some mysterious way. Like a hidden spider who moves around. I thought that was quite interesting from a technical viewpoint of a detective story.
Yes, yeah.
Well, did you ever meet anybody like Peter Farrell, an art historian?
Well, no, I don't think so.
Some of these characters have some of these characters been inspired by real people?
They're a kind of amalgam, you know, of different people. You know, I would never have ever created a character who was just the same as somebody I know. But if you think of each character, when you look back on it as well, because it's an unconscious process when you create characters. But when you look back, say 2 years after, you say, oh, there's a bit of that person, there's a bit of that person I know in that person, in that character. So you've got to be very careful if you don't want to have trouble. But that for me, you know, isn't a problem because I know that these people aren't real, but they seem very real now when I look back and read it again. You know, it's as if I've known them. And I've known a lot of these people, kinds of people, not just in Florence, but also all over Tuscany, because I've been a lot to Monte Amiato.
In Chianti-shire.
Yes, yeah, yes, Pontremoli, these places. So I suppose that's where I've met very ordinary people as well, very ordinary Tuscans. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maggie, I think there's a question for you from the audience.
Yeah.
Alessio Vinci is asking, do you have a special connection with any of the characters? And if so, why? How was that?
Yeah. Well, certainly a special connection with the lead character, Maria Farrell, because I'm as well from near Manchester. I've worked in the theatre all my life. And I suppose Maria, when I think about it, is probably the person that I could have been if I'd stayed in the UK, you know, because I wanted to go and work in television when I came out of university. And then I got sidetracked by coming to Italy. So certainly Maria has got several qualities that are similar to mine. You know, she's passionate as well about Shakespeare. Shakespeare as well is very significant in the way she handles the investigation. You know, the fact that she's rehearsing Hamlet before she leaves for Florence, and she's got in mind this character of Hamlet and Peter's connection as well with the figure of Hamlet, never being able to make up his mind. It's a characteristic that comes out in her uncle's character. So certainly Maria, and probably as well Peter for other aspects, because Peter's, you know, worked at university for most of his life before he went and did his own thing, buying and selling paintings. So there are bits of me in several of these characters, but not just one. Yeah. No, but I think it'd be very interesting. Another thing that, you know, I've not mentioned, I certainly wrote the novel thinking of an audience of people, of English speaking people. But I've been really surprised that Italian friends, you know, like you, Adelia and Itala, have read the novel and enjoyed it, because I didn't write it. I didn't write it for you, you know, for as Italians. I definitely thought it would have a market in the UK and that would be it. Yeah.
Well, I
But I
agree.
think that
It is written for a British audience. I
Yeah.
can see that.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yes, so it certainly is, but it's also interesting to see how somehow you look at Italy through the eyes of a British culture, let's say, in general.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting aspect for me, at least, which is very, very clear in your book.
Yeah, exactly. Because
There's
it's
another
like,
aspect. Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, it's like some people who came on the Grand Tour, they had a different, this very different take, didn't they, on the Italy they saw. So
Oh yes.
so Maria,
Yes.
in a way, is like that. She's not on a grand tour, but she's seeing Italy for the first time. So I suppose for Italians, yeah, that could be a very interesting aspect.
Well, yeah, for Italians, it could be interesting. It certainly is interesting for British people. Itala, in our previous meeting, was referring to this book as a kind of modern, contemporary Baedeker, as a kind of guide to move around Florence and Tuscany and
Yeah.
that region, and come to know Italy from that point of view, or your point of view. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there was another aspect we were talking about, maybe it was Italia who underlined the link with fashion somehow, and as another aspect, if you want, as another stereotype of Italianness. Okay,
Yeah.
so like the passion or the interest Maria has for how for outfits, and it comes in the scene at the very beginning when she comes to know that she has to leave to Italy because this murder happened, and she's preparing her luggage and then just picks up this dress,
Yeah.
cocktail kind of dress for an occasion. So you start understanding that there is an interest she has for this aspect of life.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, that's typical a lot of a lot of Brits, especially people who work in the theatre. They might be really, really interested in costume and beautiful costumes and sometimes beautiful clothes. But most of them go round, you know, in baggy jeans and t-shirts because they, you know, so intent on creating what they're creating. I mean, when you go to top theatres like the RSC and you meet the director, he's never going to be dressed elegantly like maybe an Italian director will be. And I think when you come to Italy as a tourist, you might get away with being dressed as you dress very casually in the UK. But the minute you become like Maria on a long stay, you feel, I think, the almost compelled to change your way of dressing, you know, to be smarter, to be more fashion conscious. And this happens to her, you know, and she realizes that the more she dresses, you know, she dresses well, she'll be able to associate with these people, maybe set up more positive relationships, that they won't be concentrating on the clothes, they'll be concentrating more on what she's got to say. So certainly, yeah, there's this slow evolution in her identity over over the months she's in Italy, from the point of view that are interested in food, in clothes, in the Italian mindset as well. You know, she's got great difficulty at the beginning understanding how these people think. You know, I think this surprises her as well, that she's used to being in her own culture where, you know, she can understand people very quickly. Here she's got a series of obstacles, and it's not just the language, it's also the culture, you know, and the kinds of, I don't know, Isla was talking about Peter as being mysterious, but he's also somebody who comes over as having several different identities, doesn't he? Because he's been teaching at university, he's been working in the modern art, contemporary art world. Is part of the Tombaroli business. We never really find out exactly what's happening there, but he's certainly been part of this illegal trade in Etruscan antiques. So these people aren't easy, you know, to suss out. So apart from solving the murder mystery, she's got this added difficulty. You know, she's not Italian, she's English, she's hardly any Italian language, and it's like, you know, a kind of jigsaw puzzle that she's confronted with.
She gradually becomes more aesthetically minded. She takes care of her own body. She gets a suntan. She likes to dress up, to put on nice shoes, and enjoy
Exactly.
life gradually, as if Italy is changing her a little bit.
Exactly, because her love of aesthetics up to that point have been in a job. I mean, she's a highly sophisticated person from the point of view of creating, you know, beautiful productions on stage. But she, as you say, Itala, she's never actually thought about her own person. And through these relationships with these Italian people, it suddenly dawns on her that there is a different way of living. I suppose that's one of the most healthy things, isn't it, about being in Europe, that once you travel, you can pick up and create new identities if you want to. You know, if you're not this kind of
Yes, you get that
Brexit
kind of freedom, yes,
mentality.
mental freedom. Yes,
Yes,
that's
mental
true.
freedom. You can be a citizen of Europe rather than a citizen of Britain or a citizen of Italy.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly, that's absolutely true. For anyone who has lived abroad for a while, you can feel
Yes.
that. Maggie, there's another question from the audience. It's Maria Cristina Cavecchi,
Yes.
who's asking, do you think it would be possible to adapt the novel for the stage?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Christina. Christina's a very good friend and a colleague from Milan University. Certainly a stage play, but I'd be much more interested in a film, because I think, you know, the different locations and everything, they're so beautiful, both in and out of Florence, that it would really, this book would lend itself to being a film. That I think could be stunning, some of the places, you know, like Pontremoli and Lago, what is it, Di Bolseno, the Etruscan country. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, be a costly film though. It wouldn't be a film on a low budget.
Ne approfitto anch'io per salutare Cristina, carissima collega, come ha detto Maggie. Maggie, maybe I don't know if Italy wants to ask some other questions.
Go ahead.
I have a kind of more technical question for you, maybe. From the point of view of the editing, of the reading of the book, have you been sharing this kind of aspect with other readers or reviewers who helped you somehow in understanding what would have worked better, or was it a work of your own mostly?
No, from a technical point of view, I've had a lot of, you know, comments and so on over the years. at the beginning of the book, there are several people I thank because of their close reading. You know, just let me. Sal Cabras, Ricardo Casarino, Elisabetta Ceccarilla, Rino Garro, Marjorie Peckham, Robert Peckham, and Jan Sewell are only, you know, the people who really read the book and helped me technically.
Yes,
Rino
telling you
Garro is
exactly.
a novelist, so he made several, you know, really important comments from the point of view, because there are two narrators. There's a first person narration of Maria and then the third person narrator of this anonymous figure. So it isn't, you know, a straight narrative. And this was something I worked with and talked to with several people before I decided in the end on that particular formula.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Maggie. I'll go
Yeah.
and read another let's say, question from Joseph Farrell. Maggie, congratulations on your novel, which I look forward to reading. I've just finished writing a book on Shasha, and I'm currently doing an article on Shasha and G.K. Chesterton. Did these writers matter in any way to you? By the way, I'm picking up that your Maria character is called Farrell, or have I misheard? How interesting it is. So, if it is so, and this is Joe Farrell writing.
Yeah. So thank you, Joe,
have in here.
very much. Yeah, this name Farrell is actually the name of my great grandmother, Maria Farrell, who came to England from Ireland. And I've always been fascinated by this Irish side of my family. And so I've also been researching it, but unfortunately, Maria came out of Ireland in the 1840s when there was the potato famine, so absolutely dirt poor. So there's very little that's known about her, but in homage to her, I wanted to, you know, create this character with her name, but it's simply a name. As regards Shasha and these writers you mentioned, no, I've absolutely, you know, there's no connection, I don't think, with what I've written. Yeah. I suppose, I know, Joe, that you've
Dante
been
is too
working.
much
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just saying to Joe, I know you've been working on Ruth Draper. Can you hear me?
I'm not sure,
You
Joe.
can't hear me.
I'm not sure. No, I don't think so. Is
I
it so,
see.
Chiara?
No, so it's
we
too
can only
complicated to ask him.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can. Yeah, you cannot.
Answer.
Yeah, unmute. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. So Joe's heard my reply, but he can't reply.
I want to add also that Maggie Rose not only praises Italy for her art, beautiful landscapes, beautiful towns, etc., but she castigates Italy because professors don't do anything. Streets are full of traffic and very dirty. Then there is a lot of corruption that you don't understand. Politics, their politics, it's impossible to understand. You know, these people, they change government every 2 minutes, all these kind of things. And then I hope that the British readers won't believe Maggie Rose entirely in this aspect of her description.
Yeah. Well, this actually was it was set in 2000. So if you remember, there was a lot of corruption, wasn't there? Big scandals coming out at the time. So it's based on truth to some degree. And it's not me who's saying it, it's Katerina, isn't it? It's the Countess.
Well,
Yeah. No, an author doesn't necessarily believe everything she puts in the mouth of her characters.
but I mean, what comes out of it?
Yes, yeah. Well, Well, no, I mean, Caterina really feels that she wants to clean up Italy, doesn't she? And she thinks if there was a Dante figure in Italy in 2000, this Dante
Yes, but
figure might have been
on the
able.
other hand, she uses a very ambiguous politician to arrange things for her.
Yes, well, these are the
man,
contradiction.
That man called Nitti,
See, yes, yes,
was an ambiguous politician who has been used by her in order to speed things up, or
yes, yes,
so
yes,
she's not
yes, yes.
very
No,
truthful.
yeah. Well, no, I try to, get in the contradictions, because somebody can be doing a lot of charity work as she does, but at the same time, she's not beyond making compromises in order to do it. Yeah. And I'm not saying this is only, relevant to Italy. I'm sure it happens in the UK as well. Yeah. Okay. So perhaps
So,
we're nearly finished. I'd just like to thank Chiara Avanzato at the Italian Institute. Chiara, thanks so much for allowing us this platform to talk this evening. I just wish we could have been, in Edinburgh
in person.
real life, but it's not been possible this time, but hopefully soon.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Maggie Rose, Itala Vivan, and Adele D'Arcangelo. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. So read this great
Dark
book.
Dante, the Dark Dante.
Yeah.
Follow the Italian Institute on our social media. So sorry, Maggie, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just saying I hope, because I'll be over in Edinburgh in August to present it in Glasgow, maybe, a real in live presentation, hopefully. Yeah. But thank you. And thanks so much to Itala and Adele for taking part in this panel.
Thank you to you for allowing us to read
It was a
this
pleasure.
book.
Thanks,
thank you.
Maggie, and
thanks
for the audience for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Buonasera.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.